As U.S. coronavirus cases pass 2 million, more evidence that the best thing you can do to protect others is also the simplest. Statues around the world are being toppled as part of a reckoning over racial injustice, and NASCAR takes a stand on the stars and bars. Here's what you need to know. Good morning. This is Cheddar's Need2Know podcast for Thursday, June 11th. I am Jill Wagner with Carlo Versano. Hey, Carlo.
Jill, how are you on this Thursday?
I'm okay. How are you doing?
I'm okay. I woke up on the wrong side of the bed. Didn't sleep very well. My back hurts and my computer's messed up, but I'll get
I'm
through it.
only laughing because that I use that expression all the time, but it's one of them that never makes sense because most people only really have one side of the bed. We say that about my daughter all the time, but it's like she didn't like her crib is next, like in a corner. She's got no choice.
Yeah.
I know
Yeah,
I'm taking an expression literally, which isn't the point, but
it's okay. It's
whatever.
one of my
It's
favorite.
early.
It's one of my favorite expressions, and it is often how I live.
All right, let's get to the news. As usual, there's a ton of it. Coronavirus cases have now surpassed 2 million here in the United States. There are 21 states that are seeing cases rise, although it's partially due to testing increases. Arizona is hitting record daily highs. Texas has seen a 42% increase in hospitalizations since Memorial Day. And a new Cambridge study is adding more fuel to the theory that widespread mask usage could significantly reduce the spread of the virus and prevent a second wave.
Yeah, I think that the study is probably the biggest news of the day. To be honest with you, it's it's a very respected study out of Cambridge, like you said. And the long and short of it is 50. They're saying that if 50% or more of the population regularly, as in like always, wears masks in public, outside, that you reduce the R naught, which remember is the sort of like metric about how how many people you're spreading. If you're infected, you're spreading the virus to. That you reduce it below 1.0, which essentially means you've contained the virus. Um, Jill, I know I've said this before. I know you have. We both have. But the simple fact that the WHO, the CDC, the White House, Dr. Fauci, I mean, everybody's favorite, infectious disease doctor, the fact that they were poo-pooing the use of masks in the early months of this, I think is going to go down as one of the greatest acts of public health malpractice in history. And again, I understand why they were doing it to a degree. They wanted to preserve PPE for medical workers, frontline workers in the beginning. But, it's the whole thing. It's like that expression. My dad always uses this expression. I don't know if this is one of those ones that is like nobody else uses anymore. But he says, "Who are you going to believe, me or your lying eyes?" Right? And it's like, of course, masks are going to help. Like we're talking about a virus that is transmitted through viral droplets that you cough out, right, or come out of your nose. Like obviously, a mask is going to help reduce that. And I think, I'm personally annoyed with myself that I didn't take it more seriously on the podcast and in my personal life. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Well, I never understood that, and I always thought it made total sense to cover your mouth. I was the person with my scarf up basically to my eyes on the subway,
Yeah,
wrapped around my face because it didn't make. What could it hurt, right? Like
exactly.
what
Right.
is the downside of possibly doing that? A couple of really quick things that I do want to mention. There was on the mask thing. There's a case out of Missouri where two hairstylists basically they came to work, they didn't feel well, like they had
Yeah,
symptoms, so they were not asymptomatic, they were symptomatic, and the salon followed all of the new guidelines and everyone was wearing masks to this point. They saw combined about 140 customers and nobody got coronavirus from them, which tells
that's
you
incredible.
that,
That tells
I
you,
mean,
right,
first of all, like that's crazy that they came to work even though they were sick. I mean, it tells you how
right.
desperate they probably were for some money. But, um, you know, the masks work, and perhaps we can avoid a major second wave of this if we take these precautions. But testimony from that HHS whistleblower, do you remember him, Rick Bright?
Yeah,
He
yeah, yeah.
had emails which showed that downplaying the use of masks and saying that they wouldn't work for regular people was actually part of a strategy that was meant to deal with a lack of preparation for the virus from the part of the federal government, because there weren't enough masks for healthcare workers. So instead of just stocking up on PPE early
Right.
enough, they said, okay, what we're going to do is just make sure that only health workers can get them. And I mean, look, I don't think that we all need to be walking around with N95 masks. But again, if there were enough, what would that hurt?
Yeah, of
Right?
course.
I
Well,
mean, so just to your point, I mean, I think that criminal is perhaps extreme, but there needs to be accountability for this when you think about how many people have died. And I want to look at the numbers here for the US. We are still doing horribly, right? There are 6
yeah,
million cases globally. 2 million of the cases are in the United States. We have 1/3 of the cases in the world, and our population is only 4%, of the world
mhm,
population. And to your point, some cases in some states, yes, there's more testing, so that's why the cases have gone up. But hospitalizations don't
that's
lie,
the bad thing.
okay?
Yeah.
And the fact that hospitalizations are going up in so many states, including some that are almost out of ICU beds, that should tell you everything you need to know.
Yeah, no, the Texas numbers this morning are definitely worrisome, and Arizona too. Arizona looks like it's really going to be a problem. Uh, it's also like the reason why it may feel like it's going down in the U.S. is because it was so bad here in New York and in the New York area, and now that it's more or less under control here, that sort of depresses the numbers on a nationwide case. Um, but yeah, just on the mask thing very briefly, I really do think that when this is all said and done, there should be like a 9/11 style commission into like what went wrong, and what did we do right and what did we do wrong. So it's not like this is the last time this could ever happen. And we need to, the PPE issue, the fact that if they were telling us that even if not to hoard PPE, but even if just to go outside and put a scarf around your face or a bandana or something, if that actually could have saved significant amount of lives, then that, like you said, like there needs to be accountability for on the messaging.
All right, let's talk about the other big story: statues and monuments around the world being toppled, damaged, or removed altogether in the aftermath of the George Floyd killing. In Boston, a Christopher Columbus statue was beheaded. In Richmond, people tore down a statue of Jefferson Davis, the president of the Confederacy. In Antwerp, Belgium, they've removed a controversial monument to King Leopold II, also known as the Butcher of Congo. Speaker Nancy Pelosi now calling for 11 Confederate statues to be removed from the halls of the Capitol.
On the statue issue, I sort of find it hard to get worked up about it, but I know that a lot of people get worked up about it on both sides, and I get that. I do think this is definitely going to be a wedge issue. I think that this is going to be one of those things that, in the same way that like gay marriage was a wedge issue back in 2004, I think that probably the Trump campaign is probably going to look at this as something that they can really use to rally their base. The president also said, this is sort of related. He said yesterday that he wouldn't even consider renaming military bases that are named after Confederate leaders. He tweeted, these monuments and very powerful bases have become part of a great American heritage and a history of winning victory and freedom. I just thought that was so funny because, like, whatever you think about the issue, the idea that a military base named after a Confederate leader is a part of a history of winning or freedom, just like, if you took any history class, you would know that how ridiculous that sounds. But yeah.
The president's also calling on authorities in Seattle to quote, take back your city after demonstrators, which he has called domestic terrorists, set up camp around an abandoned police precinct. The area is being called the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, or CHAZ. police have stopped patrolling the streets and police barriers have been repurposed to set up the borders of that zone.
This is kind of an interesting story. There's I was watching footage from inside this the Chaz inside the zone, and because the president made it out to sound like it was this like anarchist camp, and it's mostly like people watching movies and listening to music. Um, it has big time Occupy vibes. If you guys remember Occupy Wall Street back in 2011, 2012 ish, sort of feels like that. A lot of what's happening now has sort of the vibes of Occupy and also like the early days of the Me Too movement in a lot of ways. I'm curious if anyone else has sort of made those. Obviously, like I don't want to minimize the issue of the reckoning that's happening right now, but I find it interesting, sort of the way that these movements sort of start, and then sort of like the backlash, and then the backlash to the backlash. They all move in very similar ways, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there again, I mean, I know we've talked about this. I think that something does feel a little bit different about this right now. I feel like there's this cultural reckoning that is happening. And what struck me is the top 5 books on the New York Times bestseller list for nonfiction: White Fragility. So you want to talk about race, How to Be an Anti-Racist, Me and White Supremacy, and The New Jim Crow. So we are
Wow.
talking about clearly this interest, especially among white Americans, for understanding how we got to this point. And that you can't downplay that. I mean,
No, I think you're right. I mean, yeah. I mean, people speak with their wallets, right? So if they're buying these books, like they're not doing that for the heck of it, right?
all right, let's talk a little bit about the economy. The Federal Reserve predicting a slow economic recovery, with unemployment ending the year at 9.3% and falling to about 6.5% next year. Fed Chair Jerome Powell saying he expects millions of people who lost their jobs because of the pandemic to become permanently unemployed. The central bank says it will keep buying bonds and taking other measures to support the economy, like buying bonds and keeping interest rates near zero for a very long time.
So what does that mean for regular people? It means pretty much, loans will be cheaper. That's if you can get them, right? Banks are being very tight with lending, and they probably are going to continue to be very tight with lending for a while. That, of course, could impact the housing market. You got a 3.5% APR on your mortgage. That doesn't mean jack if you can't get approved, right? It also means your savings isn't really accruing anything, which is actually, I was thinking, maybe part of the reason why the market has been so hot, right? Because you have all of these retail investors who are, maybe they're sitting on this cash and they don't really have anything to do with it. So they're just kind of like putting it to work in the market. But that's just a theory. I don't know if there's actually any evidence of that.
Yeah, well, retail investors, in part, helping propel Tesla past $1,000 a share yesterday for the first time ever. In addition to this being a nice round number, the milestone also vaults Tesla past Toyota into becoming the world's most valuable car maker by market cap, even though it only produces a tiny fraction of the number of vehicles of Toyota, Ford, GM, you name it.
Yeah, it's. I mean, if you told me this like a year ago, I would have said, that's crazy, right? $1,000 a share for Tesla. They barely make any cars in the scheme of things. And it was less than 2 years ago, Joe. Remember that Elon Musk was ridiculed, for saying he was going to take Tesla private at $420 a share, right? So he, once again, love or hate the guy, he seems to always get the last laugh. You really got to hand it to him. But Tesla also is part of the NASDAQ, right? The NASDAQ hit a milestone of its own yesterday. It closed above 10,000 for the first time ever. And the NASDAQ, thing to remember about the NASDAQ is it's made up mostly of tech stocks. So it just shows you how, in the terms of the market, what people want right now are these big tech names like Amazon, Facebook, Tesla, Apple.
Absolutely. It also shows you that, the stock market is a bet on the future. It's not a
Right.
bet on right now. So if you're
No,
trying
I mean,
to
that's true.
understand why the economy is tanking and 1 in 4 people are out of work and the stock market's hitting record highs, it's because it's because of that. It's because it's a bet on that things down the line are going to improve.
Well, it's also just like completely. I mean, I know that this is now just like rote to say this, but it is so divorced from reality. I mean, the head of the Fed saying yesterday that we're going to have 10% unemployment for the rest of the year, in a years long recovery. And then the Nasdaq hits 10,000. I don't, whatever.
And you have to wonder if the stock market doing so well is going to make lawmakers turn around and say that they're not going to do another stimulus package. A lot of
Yeah.
the benefits and stuff run out in July. There are Americans, and the Fed has warned about this. There are a lot of Americans right now who are making more money on unemployment than they were making while working.
hmm
Which has
What
definitely given the economy a bit of a boost. But that additional stimulus runs out in next month.
I think that it's going to be. I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens probably in August, right? Because you're going to have, that the unemployment benefits run out. You're also going to have this moratorium on evictions lifting, and I think a lot of people don't really understand what that is going to mean. I think there may be people who have their landlords have been giving them a break, but they're not doing that out of the goodness of their hearts, right? Like eventually they're going to have to figure out if you can't pay your rent, they're going to have to evict you. Um, so I continue to think that we're going to see a sort of collapse at the end of the summer. But I've been so wrong about this stuff, so don't take anything I say, at least when it comes to this.
All right, a big development in sports. NASCAR is going to be banning Confederate flags at its racetracks. This is 2 days after Bubba Wallace, which is NASCAR's only black driver, called for the organization to do so. Wallace drove his normal number 43 Chevy at last night's race in Martinsville, but the car had a special Black Lives Matter paint theme. At least one NASCAR driver said he's going to quit the sport over the Confederate flag policy.
I gotta say, NASCAR also got rid of their guidelines that had previously banned silent protest during the national anthem. So NASCAR drivers will be allowed to take a knee or do whatever they want, pretty much during the Star Spangled Banner now. I mean, if you had NASCAR, Jill, is the sport sort of like being the most woke, congratulations. I never would have thunk it.
All right, Carla, let's end on some good news. What do you have?
The story in the New York Times yesterday that I just absolutely loved. It was about the Sikh community in New York, particularly in New York, but it was really about the Sikh community around the country, and how part of their religion is that they have to feed anybody in need, right? So they have these huge communal kitchens at their temples that are called gurdwaras, right? And they've been putting them to work in the pandemic. And then with the protesters, they've been putting out thousands upon thousands of in New York, these delicious Indian meals. Not just like peanut butter and jelly, right? Like really good food. I'm doing a disservice to the story. You should really just read it. But Sikhism is an incredible religion. They're not allowed to proselytize. It's all about service to others. It was just, this was a really heartwarming story that I wanted to share. I tweeted the link yesterday if you guys want to read it.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you. My good news story is that according to some people who have been on the New York City subway recently, they're so clean. The cars are so clean, they actually smell like lemon.
I've heard
the
this.
subway,
Yeah.
the MTA giving away free face masks to anybody who needs them. Yesterday, I interviewed the head of the MTA. He told me they're not going to be raising fares because of anything related to coronavirus. He said that they have been basically following protocols from South Korea and other countries that opened up mass transit amid this pandemic. And so far, at least in those countries, it has not led to any new outbreaks. And look, at somebody who is going to have to be commuting, and we're all going to eventually have to get back to the office, or some of us will, everybody driving doesn't work for any sort of,
Especially in New York.
Especially in New York. It doesn't work for the environment. It doesn't work for people's lives and any semblance of a work-life balance. So the fact that, I'm not necessarily ready to get back on the subway yet myself, but,
Yeah.
or the LIRR or the train or whatever. But the fact that the subways, are as clean as you could be. People have been going down there and they're like, it's unrecognizable. Like
Yeah, I know.
it's like as clean
There's
as,
no unidentified liquids. There's
yeah,
no
exactly. Nothing is spilling. It's not someone's lunch from 1985 down there. It's clean.
I mean, how long will that last? Probably not very. But kudos to the MTA, I guess, for the reason why this is the case is because they shut down the system overnight for the first time in its history to to
Yeah.
disinfect the cars and everything. But I know I saw a story yesterday about the people going back to work, and they're like, "What? This is the subway? Sparkling, the sparkling metal and the no weird stuff on the ground you step in."
I mean, the smell down there in a normal August is
Oh
is
God.
next level, right? It's like
I gotta say, Jill,
150 degrees.
it's bad, but I miss it. I do. I miss the
I do
subway.
too.
I never thought I would say it, but I miss the routine. I miss all the weird stuff that happens. I actually miss commuting. And remember, note the time, June 11th, 2020, because I'm sure the first time I take the subway again, I'll be over that again. But for now.
All right, yeah, but like I said, when I heard lemon smell on the subway, I never thought I'd hear that one. All right, everybody, that's what you need to know for Thursday, June 11th.
All right, guys, see you tomorrow.